It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Yeah, we're not afraid here and declare your independence. With me, Ernest Hancock, from the beautiful studios of Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com here in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, you know, that's home of the Freedom Summit, freedomsummit.com. Make sure you go check that out. Lots of great speakers we've been sharing with you in the last couple of weeks, and we got a big one here. We have John Buttrick. Now, John Buttrick is a sitting Superior Court judge here in Phoenix, Arizona for Maricopa County, and he was the Libertarian candidate for governor in 1994, and that's what really put us on the map here in Arizona. And the Libertarian Party had the benefit of his counsel when he became the platform chairman for the National Party and a Libertarian National Committee member for several years. So this is, he knows that Libertarian thing. In the belly of the beast, he's advocating it and playing judge. So we're going to have him at the Freedom Summit on Saturday afternoon, a 2-hour program, along with Mark J. Victor and Judge Jim Gray from Southern California, are all going to, put the criminal justice system, or the justice system in general, on trial. And there's a lot of information that we need to have shared with us, a lot of things going on, and I'm sure a lot of the people will have a lot of questions. Welcome, Judge, and I'm glad you came in. I want to make sure that you take the opportunity to share with the people what you're hoping that you're going to relay to them and information you think they need.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here today, Ernie. It's always a pleasure to come down and see you. I'm really looking forward to this particular Freedom Summit. I've appeared at them before and made speeches and shaken hands and gotten to know people, etc. But this is something a little bit special, because I'm going to be on a panel with Mark Victor, and Mark, hopefully he'll be grilling us a little bit, and I know he can do that. He's a guy with enormous amount of experience in the criminal justice system in particular. In Arizona, and he's had his hand in a lot of interesting cases, and he also knows the system inside out. But my co-panelist that I'm also very excited about is Judge Jim Gray, as you mentioned. Judge Gray was a Superior Court judge in California, the same job I have in Arizona, he had in California. He's recently retired. I have never met Judge Gray, but I've read his work, and he has written a tremendous amount about the drug war, for instance. It's probably, to my recollection, there's nobody else from a judicial standpoint that has written with such clarity and such detail for so long about the war on drugs and what's wrong with it than Judge Gray. So he's the number one guy in that regard. So I'm going to be really thrilled and honored to be on a dais with him and with Mark asking us questions. And we'll talk about the criminal justice system and also the civil system. People don't think about that as much, but that's the area that I'm involved in, at least have been for the last few years. I've done criminal rotations also, and even family court. We may even get to talk about that a little bit. But we're going to be talking about the justice system, what it does right, what it does wrong, and how it might affect you and your freedoms in the immediate future.
It's affecting us.
It sure does, on a daily basis.
And that's one thing that I'm hoping that you'll be able to share with us is, are we going to be looking to the justice system to walk us through the troubles that are coming economically? That's one thing that's unique about you and your position and your ideology and your philosophy, is that you understand the importance of economics. You understand how society might, react to what's coming, and the people, when we have a lot of problems with crime or abuses of government, are we going to be able to look to the justice system to kind of walk us through this labyrinth of problems that are coming? Can we look to that?
The short answer is no, and for two reasons. Number one, because of the separation of powers, the way the state and federal government is set up, the leaders, so to speak, to walk us through or to make economic policy is got to be come from the legislative and executive branches. The judges just aren't going to do that. But number two, and most important, I don't think that the judiciary in this country, either on the federal or state level, shows any significant bias towards liberty, so to speak, which is a shame. I'm ashamed of my fellow judges, and to a large extent. And it's not just economic issues; it's criminal justice issues, it's constitutional issues. You find very, very few judges on the appellate court level in the federal or state judiciary who are leaders in what you and I might call the liberty movement. Why is that? Well, first of all, on the federal judiciary, they're all appointed by, guess who? Republican and Democrat politicians. Are they likely then to be people that come out of the liberty movement? Extraordinarily unlikely. On the state level, in those states where they're not appointed by more politicians, they have to run in competitive, sometimes partisan elections. That means they got to have a little R or a little D next to their name to get elected, and a lot of money has to flow into those campaigns. And where does that money come from? Comes from lobbyists, comes from politicians and politicians' friends, all flowing in. And so who do you get elected there? Well, you get little mini politicians. So whether it's a separation of powers or it's through judicial appointment and election processes, you don't get leaders of the freedom movement out of the judiciary. Plus, once you're in the judiciary, then you're handcuffed because you cannot, for instance, I cannot, by ethical rules, endorse candidates, endorse political parties. So you never see me doing that because I can't do it while I'm in office. And those rules are pretty much uniform across the United States. So you have non-politically active judges appointed by politicians and then walled off by the Constitution from making public policy. The only thing that judges can do and should be doing is interpreting the Constitution and applying the Constitution to individual laws that come up and saying, you can't do this, it's unconstitutional. You can't do that, it's unconstitutional. That would be the leadership role for judges. I don't see it happening, though.
Why?
Well, because of where they came from.
I mean, you gave a good reason, but
they also come out. I'll give you a broader sense. They all come out of law schools, and the law schools are all taught by constitutional law professors who are steeped in what I would call the statist view of the Constitution for the last 100 years. And what they're doing, essentially, is teaching young lawyers
how to rationalize it.
How to rationalize and how and various interpretations of clauses in the Constitution to ever expand the role of government, very rarely to contract it. And that's been a very slow but steady process for 100 years. And so there are no lawyers or judges alive now practicing in office who had constitutional law professors back when they were young pups teaching them, from my view at least, how the Constitution should be interpreted. There are a few, don't get me wrong, but we're a very small number compared to the overwhelming number of sitting judges and practical lawyers.
How do you when you talk to people and you talk, and that's one thing. We're going to come up on a break here in a minute, but when we come back, I really want to hear how you interact socially and professionally with other judges that you know to be they don't got their mind right, and what kind of conversations that you have. I mean, go ahead and start us off with that, and we'll finish when we come back.
Well, I'll tell you what, I am known among my fellow judges for the fact that I'm always walking around with a copy of the Constitution in my pocket. And when we get into these discussions about the interpretation of the Constitution, I take it out and start reading from it. They're amazed at that would be a way to approach a constitutional problem.
You're not allowed. You're just not allowed. Well, we're allowed to talk about the Constitution, whatever deal. They got me. I got to be in the deal? We'll talk about that, too. We come back here and declare your independence in just a little bit. You guys stay right there.